Hey everyone, so you're thinking about checking out Last Breath 2025. Well, we're about to take a deep dive into it.
Ah, yeah.
We'll break down a couple reviews we found so you can see if it's worth watching or not.
Sounds good.
The premise alone is pretty wild.
Yeah.
It's based on a true story
Okay.
about deep-sea diver Chris Lemons.
Wow.
He was basically fighting to survive.
Oh, wow. Intense.
It's directed by Alex Parkinson
Mm-hmm.
and starring Finn Cole, Simu Liu,
Okay.
and Woody Harrelson.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
But before you hit play, let's see what the reviewers had to say.
Right.
So you can decide if it's something you want to spend your time on.
Yeah, good idea.
One thing that really stood out in both reviews was the realism.
Yeah, they were really impressed with how accurately they portrayed saturation diving.
Saturation dive.
Yeah, it's not just like some Hollywood action sequence.
Right.
They really dove deep into the technical details, the equipment, the procedures, like everything.
Okay, for those of us who haven't been on an oil rig,
Sure.
what exactly is saturation diving?
Well, imagine living and working
Mm.
in a pressurized environment for weeks,
Yeah.
hundreds of feet below the surface.
Gosh.
That's saturation diving. They're basically living in a hyperbaric chamber,
Okay.
slowly adjusting their bodies to the extreme pressure
I see.
so they can work on the ocean floor.
That just sounds so intense.
Oh, and it is.
Yeah.
It's incredibly dangerous.
Really?
Even a small mistake can be fatal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So knowing how risky this all is,
Mhm.
did that make the stakes in the film feel even higher for you?
Oh, absolutely. The film does such a good job of capturing that sense of isolation and danger.
Yeah,
The underwater sequences are particularly well done.
I bet.
You really feel like you're right there with the divers,
Wow.
experiencing the pressure, the darkness,
Yeah.
the limited visibility.
Oh, wow.
I can see why the reviewers were so excited about the visual impact.
Yeah, those scenes sound amazing.
Yeah.
I bet they're pretty intense on the big screen.
Oh, definitely.
Speaking of things that make a movie memorable, both reviews mentioned the performances,
Yeah.
especially Woody Harrelson
Oh, yeah.
as veteran diver Duncan Alcock.
I thought that was an interesting choice
Yeah.
because he's known for his comedic roles.
True. Yeah.
So seeing him in this really serious life or death scenario
Right.
could be a real draw for viewers.
It's true.
It's like a whole different side to him.
It's interesting, I think his casting could be a draw,
Yeah.
but I wonder if some people might be distracted.
How so?
Since they're used to seeing him in more comedic roles,
Yeah.
they might be kind of waiting for a punchline.
Right. Like it takes them out of the moment a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah,
Be interesting to see how people react.
definitely.
But in terms of the overall narrative, both reviewers agree that the second act is where the film really picks up.
Great.
It's a race against time kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
You'll be holding your breath right along with the characters.
Oh, man.
We won't spoil anything, but
Okay.
let's just say things get pretty intense down there.
So they really emphasize that feeling of claustrophobia and suspense.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
So by the second act, we're basically holding our breath,
Right.
along with the characters.
Totally.
I might need an oxygen tank by the end of this deep dive.
You and me both. But it sounds like it really delivers
Yeah.
on that suspense.
Yeah, that edge of your seat kind of thing.
Exactly.
Now in the middle of all that action.
Yeah.
And underwater drama.
Right.
Both reviews also talked about the themes of teamwork
Uh-huh.
and resilience.
Yes, definitely.
What'd you think about that?
Well, the film really touches on those themes. The idea that
Yeah.
even when it seems like there's no hope,
Yeah.
human connection and determination can really shine through.
That's powerful. Did you feel like the film effectively conveyed those themes?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And it's something I think we should talk more about.
Okay.
Because while the film really nails the technical side
Right.
of this incredible true story,
Yeah.
there are some areas where the reviewers felt it kind of fell short.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, for one thing, they thought the characters were a little one-dimensional.
Oh, okay.
Even though they were well acted,
Yeah.
they weren't very complex.
Like those classic character types you see.
Yeah, exactly. Like the tough guy with a heart of gold.
Right.
Or the damsel in distress.
Uh-huh.
They felt like the film leaned a little too much on those familiar tropes,
Yeah, I see.
which could leave some viewers wanting more.
More depth to the characters.
Exactly.
Did you find yourself wanting more from the characters?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I mean, the survival element was definitely really compelling. Yeah.
But I did find myself wishing I knew a bit more about their backstories,
Right.
Their motivations, their inner struggles, that kind of thing.
Okay, so you're saying even in a high-stakes survival thriller,
Yeah,
you still crave that connection
I do.
to the characters.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It's those human elements
Right.
that really make a story work.
Absolutely. And speaking of things that can make or break a movie,
Oh, yeah?
both reviewers mentioned some issues with the pacing.
Oh, interesting.
Pacing issues, huh?
Yeah.
What did they say about that?
It sounds like the first act was kind of slow.
Okay.
Like a lot of setup and exposition
Right.
before things really got going.
So it takes a while to get to those edge of your seat moments.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
And then on the flip side, they also said the ending felt a little rushed.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's slow to start and then bam, it's over.
Yeah, that's kind of what they're saying. Do you think that could hurt the emotional impact of the film?
It could.
You spend all this time with the characters and then suddenly it's over.
Right. You don't really get to process everything that happened.
Doesn't that feel a little unsatisfying?
Yeah, it's like
like
you're sprinting a marathon.
Uh-huh.
And you stop right before the finish line.
Exactly. You've built up all this momentum,
right?
That emotional investment, and then it just ends.
Yeah. Feels like a missed opportunity, doesn't it?
It does. You don't get to see the characters' reactions or anything.
Exactly.
Maybe a sense of relief or even some lingering trauma.
Yeah, for sure. And that brings us back to that question we were talking about earlier,
How about
the whole balance between realism and emotional engagement.
Right.
Because the film's great at the technical stuff.
Yeah.
But the reviewers didn't think it delivered as much.
Emotionally.
Yeah.
Do you think those two things have to be separate?
Not at all. I mean, there are plenty of movies out there that do both.
Yeah.
Really well.
Like what?
Well, think about Apollo 13.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It's really accurate,
Yeah.
In how it depicts the mission, but it also creates this incredible tension.
Yeah.
And you feel for the characters,
Totally. You connect with them.
With the astronauts.
Right.
And their families.
Exactly. You're on the edge of your seat the whole time.
I remember.
Not just because of what's happening, but because you care about what happens to these people.
So it's not just showing us the nuts and bolts.
Right.
It's about making you care about who's involved.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And I think that's what makes Last Breath so interesting.
How so?
Well, because it doesn't really do that.
It's all head, no heart.
Well, maybe that's a little harsh.
Okay.
But they felt like they could have explored the characters' feelings a little more.
We talked about those tropes earlier.
Yeah, the familiar character types.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Well, if they had dug a little deeper into the characters' stories, maybe, your motivations, then those tropes wouldn't have felt so flat.
So even though this is based on a true story, you're saying there's still room to, get creative.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Especially when it comes to the emotional side of things.
Right.
A good filmmaker can use those real events as a starting point to really get into the human side of it all.
It's about finding that balance between the truth and what resonates with us emotionally.
Exactly.
Now, another thing the reviewers brought up was the lack of a real ending.
Yeah.
They felt it was abrupt and didn't really deal with the impact of everything that happened.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, do you think a film like this needs a neat and tidy ending? Or is it okay to leave the audience hanging a little bit?
Yeah, with some unanswered questions. Yeah.
I think it depends on the movie, really.
Right.
Sometimes an ambiguous ending can be really effective. It makes you think, draw your own conclusions.
Right.
But in this case, with Last Breath, it's based on something real.
Right.
And the stakes are so high.
Yeah.
I almost feel like it needed a more solid resolution to give people a sense of closure.
I get it. It's like we've gone through this whole ordeal with the characters,
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the credits are rolling.
Right. And you haven't really had a chance to absorb it all. That lack of closure can be kind of frustrating.
Especially when you're dealing with such an intense story.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's like the filmmakers were so focused on getting to the rescue that they forgot to to let the story breathe.
Exactly.
They will say.
Let the characters, let the audience really feel the weight of everything.
Okay, so it's not just about the ending itself.
No.
It's about how they got there.
It's about the whole journey.
Okay, so we've got pacing problems, lack of emotional depth, this kind of sudden ending.
Yeah.
Seems like there are some downsides.
There are.
To Last Breath, even though it's technically impressive.
Right.
Is there anything the reviewers actually liked about the film?
Well, they did say it was a good reminder of how brave these divers are.
Oh, okay.
And how skilled they have to be.
Yeah.
It shows how dangerous their job is.
Right.
And the sacrifices they make.
It's kind of a tribute then.
It is, yeah.
To a profession that a lot of people don't think about.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's easy to forget about the people who do these really difficult and dangerous jobs.
Absolutely.
To keep things running.
And even though the film doesn't necessarily explore the emotional side of things as much as it could.
Yeah.
It at least gives you a glimpse into that world.
So it could spark some interesting conversations.
Definitely.
About what it takes to do that kind of work.
Exactly.
The risks, the rewards, the technology involved.
For sure.
I think that's something worth noting.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't quite nail everything in terms of, storytelling and emotion.
I agree.
Okay, so we've covered a lot.
We have.
About Last Breath.
We've seen the good and the bad, right?
Yeah, we have.
The things that make you think.
Exactly. I think we're ready to wrap up.
Sounds good.
And help our listener decide whether or not they want to check out this movie.
All right.
All right, so we've come back up to the surface after our deep dive into Last Breath 2025.
Yeah.
We've seen the amazing visuals and felt the suspense and learned all about the world of saturation diving.
Right.
But we've also found a few snags along the way.
Yeah, like those characters.
Right, they weren't very well developed.
And some pacing issues too.
Yeah, a little bit of a slow start.
And that ending.
Right, it kind of left us hanging.
Yeah, definitely could have been better.
So the question is,
yeah,
should you watch Last Breath?
Well, like with any good deep dive, I think we've come up with more questions than answers.
That's true. It's a bit of a mixed bag, isn't it?
It is.
On the one hand, it's technically brilliant.
Yeah, the filmmaking is top-notch.
But it doesn't really deliver on the emotional side.
That's right.
So we end up admiring the craft, but maybe not connecting with the characters as much as we'd like.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary.
It seems like the reviewers felt the same way.
They did.
But everyone's different, right?
Of course, yeah.
What resonates with one person might not do anything for someone else.
Exactly.
And that's kind of the whole point of these deep dives. Right?
It absolutely.
We're not telling you what to think.
No way.
We just want to give you the info you need.
Right.
So you could decide for yourself.
To watch it or not.
So if you love action-packed thrillers.
Yeah.
And you can appreciate a film that's really realistic, then Last Breath might be for you.
But if you're someone who really needs that emotional connection to the characters, you might want to keep your expectations in check.
It might not be the most emotionally fulfilling movie.
But it's still a chance to see a world that most of us will never experience.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
These deep-sea divers are incredibly brave.
They really are. To do what they do takes a lot of courage.
So before we go, anything else that stood out to you from the reviews?
Well, one thing I kept thinking about was the long-term impact.
Oh, yeah, like psychologically.
Yeah, exactly.
We see them fighting for their lives.
Right.
But what happens after that?
How do they deal with the memories? Yeah, the trauma.
That's something the film doesn't really explore.
No, not really.
But it's definitely something to think about.
Makes you wonder about the hidden costs.
Of that kind of work.
Yeah, it shows the physical dangers, but what about the stuff you can't see?
The scars you can't see.
Exactly.
And it reminds us that even the toughest people are still vulnerable.
In the face of nature, I guess.
Yeah, and just how fragile life really is.
That's deep.
So for those of you who do decide to watch Last Breath, maybe keep that in mind.
It's not just about the action.
Well,
it's about the human cost.
The things we don't always see.
It's like every deep dive, whether it's into the ocean
or into a film,
can
show us things we didn't expect.
That's why we do it, right?
That's why we do it.
The exploring.
The questioning.
The deep dives.
All right, well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Last Breath.
Good stuff.
We've talked about the good and the bad.
The highs and the lows.
Now it's your turn to decide.
Is it worth watching?
Let us know what you think.
Yeah, share your thoughts.
We'd love to hear from you.
And until next time, keep exploring.
Keep questioning.
And keep diving deep.